welcome Dr. Stephen Treat to St. Thomas. He is a senior staff therapist and a former director and CEO of Council for Relationships. Currently, Dr. Treat continues to see clients. He teaches at Thomas Jefferson University, and he also consults with family businesses. Dr. Treat studied at Andover Newton Theological Seminary, the University of Pennsylvania, in the Marriage and Family Therapy Training Program at the Council for Relationships. And in addition to being an instructor of psychiatry and human behavior at Thomas Jefferson Medical College, he's a clinical member and approved supervisor in the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. Also, he's a member of the Association of Pastoral Counseling. He's the author of 2 books, Pastoral Marital Therapy and Couples in Treatment, Techniques and Approaches for Effective Practice. And he is no stranger to St. Thomas. I know many of you have had a chance to hear him speak before. So it is a joy to welcome back Dr. Treat to our community. Would you join me in giving him a warm welcome?
Well, this is one of the few places I forgot to change my resume. I'd say about 9/10 of that is not true. It was true, don't get me wrong, but I'm actually pretty much retired, having a good time. My 74th birthday is coming up. I take care of my grandchildren on Mondays and sometimes on Fridays with my wife. We're having a ball doing that. I still do a little bit of work with family businesses, but mostly I'm enjoying a different time of my life. So. But always glad to be back here. And just it's been a wonderful tradition for me over the years. And I'm devoted to certain, actually very few, but a certain number of groups. And until you kick me out because I can't put 2 words together or my age is catching up, I'll always be glad to come back. It's always fun to be here. Interesting topic. I mean, we're all living this stuff in terms of our lives and families, but I'm going to talk about it very specifically in terms of skills. And then you can put in the content as you will. I got some advice on different contents I can put into this already, but you can put the content in. I will say that the majority of my work in marriage and family therapy was exactly this. Families had no ability to have a constructive conversation over difficult topics. And because you didn't have a conversation, or we didn't have constructive conversations over difficult topics, families divided, they split, they cut off, they did all sorts of dynamics and went with it. So we have lots of different ways of applying it, but the way I'm most interested in applying it now is that. And then you can apply it to a general part of your life as you can. So I'm going to do a little role playing today, so you can't quote me. You following on this? You might wonder how much is true, but you can guess at that and you can figure it out over time. So anyway, I was trying to think how to begin with this, so I just wanted to talk about a conversation I had with my wife last night. And I said to her, it's going to be our 75th birthday next year. We're both going to be 75, we've been married 54 years. And I just think it's about time to go on the Ann's Choice. You know Ann's Choice, one of the 55 plus communities. And my wife responded, I'm not doing that. No way, whatever. Am I going to the Ann's Choice or any 55 plus community? My parents lived in their house, right before they died. My dad got sick. One day, he died 2 years later, and lived in this house the entire time. I'm not leaving this house. So I said to her, look, it's hard for me to keep this place up. It's going to be more difficult. I'm just not as agile. I don't want to climb ladders anymore. I'm recognizing that I'm coming of age. And she says, you could hire all that stuff. I said, I am not hiring that stuff. I never hire anyone. Anyway, I do that stuff. And she said, well, that's because you're so cheap. It's too darn cheap to just hire someone who can come and do the landscape. We can afford it. We can afford the landscaping. We can afford people to take down the trees. We don't have to take these out and out. I said, don't call me cheap. You're pretty selfish for not wanting to do this. I could keep going. So the question is, kind of starting off, is that a conversation?
No.
Well, yes.
Perfect. What isn't a conversation for you. I'm getting over here.
Well, you might have started as an attempt to have a conversation,
Might have started as, you ever hear? It might have started as an attempt to have a conversation.
but it devolved.
It devolved into
An argument and name calling and.
a
not-
dance.
Not good, bad dance.
An argument, a name calling, and a dance. Okay? Thoughts?
It's just such a familiar type of conversation. Or it's like the Costanzas, how they used to talk. I mean, it's just a form of conversation, I think, for some people that I know personally.
Right. So if it is a conversation for you, then these skills are really important. These conversations that my wife and I were just having, and the way we had it, do what to our relationship? Anybody?
Strange.
Does it bring it closer or farther away? Do we gain more understanding or less understanding?
Less.
Does she understand what I'm feeling? Do I understand what she's feeling? And the answer is no. This has been our history forever. It's been our history in churches forever. You know, I can't even believe I was just at your service and you don't even say the Lord's Prayer correctly. Everybody knows the correct way to say it, right? It's sin and sinners. It's not trespasses and trespasses. What are you talking about here? I don't understand. But lives have been lost on less than that. Some of the kids went up there and baptized and got baptized. Lives have been lost in the history of our church in less than that. Matter of fact, I would not even be here in the United States if it wasn't an argument. Richard Treat in 1630 went to the head of the church and said, we should not be putting a steeple on our church. And the head of the church said, you have no right to tell me what to do. I'm doing whatever I want to do. This money should be given to the poor. They argued, they yelled at each other, and Richard Treat got on a boat and went to Plymouth and then to Newark and Hartford, and here I am. So anyway, there are lots of tough conversations, and there are lots of difficult ones, but there are skills that go with it. And there are reasons that we don't do them well. And many families don't. If you could practice the skill, and I'm pretty good at the skills, I'm pretty lousy at the practice sometimes. You can just ask Elizabeth. You know, I just go back to my own instinct. I go back to my own, you yell at me, I'll yell at you, you follow me, you do a retort, I'll do a retort, you know, we'll go to positioning, or these kinds of things, just human behavior. But when I practice the skill, my life actually goes better. There's just no mystery about it. So I get a little handout. Has everybody got one out there? I got a little bit of time. So I would tell you that that is not a conversation. That is a way that two people have of actually distancing from each other. And it's no different with a, here I got plenty more. There's no way that's, and I can give you 100 examples of both good and lousy communications throughout. Both good and lousy communications I had with my own kids and all sorts of things. I was reminded of one where my son came to me in graduate school and said, I'm simply not going to have my classes. To which my response was, I just paid $50,000 to have you go to this school. You are going to those classes. And no, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. It's not a conversation. And eventually I asked, why not? And he said, the professor lectures, he doesn't allow questions, and the lectures are on the internet. And I can read it and understand it and comprehend it better by reading it than listening to him sit. He said a few words, talk. And then I said, I get it. So let's talk about the skills. Can we do that? We're going to take a little bit of time. We're going to go down one at a time. This is all biblical. So you can apply it, or apply it as you want, but it's all biblical. You get rid of most of the defense mechanisms. Give me the top 5 or 6 defense mechanisms. The things I would use with you to make sure you can't get very near me. What would I do? Try one? Anybody? Denial. I would use denial, right. I would constantly deny. Elizabeth would say something to me and I would constantly go to deny. That's good. Try another. Anger. Anger is a classic defense mechanism. Anger by definition, like Jesus talked about He did not say you should go to bed angry. He should not say you should be angry with your brother and sister and not do anything about it. There are very specific scriptural passages. He says, and what you do in those situations. You go to your brother, you go figure it out, you get help, you go figure it out. Anger covers emotion. That's what we use to cover emotion. So I will get angry with you instead of letting you know what I feel. Yes?
Personal attack.
Personal attack. You personalize something. That's a more in-depth one. We all carry certain types of interjects inside ourselves. These interjects are the classics, are rejection, abandonment, feeling unheard, feeling unloved, feeling criticized, feeling controlled. And because of it, we are super sensitive to these ideas. So one of you might disagree with me in here. I'm going to take it where? I'm going to personalize it. I'm going to do that as you're criticizing. And I'm going to tell you, don't speak till you raise your hand. And when I say to you, don't speak till you raise your hand, you're going to do what with me? Look, you're a guest here. You can't tell me not to speak unless I hold my hand. And where are we going to end up? Does it make sense? This is a little bit of the role play we're doing here. So just, don't quote me on Steve said this. All right? Give me other classes. Anger, personalization, yes? Projection. You're too sophisticated. I'm thinking about the similar one. Projection is a very interesting one, though, in this whole topic, because what that means is I'm going to take the pieces of myself. I'm actually going to talk about this later, but we'll just talk about it now. I'm going to take the pieces of myself I do not love, and I'm going to project them onto somebody else. So the classic white male prejudice towards an African American male is they are what? You can say it. What was the classic prejudice?
Dangerous?
They're dangerous, number one, perfectly, and they're stupid, and they are lazy. Those are simply projections. The things I can't tolerate about myself, I project onto other people as if I don't own them. We can do this with women, we can do it with...
That's a good one.
Thank you very much. We can do this with anything. So when we project, it's a defense mechanism against what we already know about ourselves, or we're unable to actually address it. Try another. Simple ones. We judge.
Yeah.
I judge you. So if I judge you, what are you going to do back? Is it going to be a conversation? If I was really serious, I said, you're saying, but I said, the words very incorrectly. I mean, if I was serious about that, do you follow me on that? It's it. Or blame. Judgment, blame, criticism, projection, personalization. You miss the big one.
What's like dismissal? Like,
Yes, dismissal.
in the old days when the
Just
men are like, you
dismissal.
don't know because
You
you're
want a
a woman."
conversation, I'm simply going to dismiss you. The other huge one, of course, is condescension.
That's kind of,
I didn't think you'd actually get that one very quickly, because, you know, most students get it. Some students, these tables get it, these tables get it.
that was related to mine.
Special help over here. Thoughts? Anybody? These are just defense mechanisms. You get rid of them all. You can't get rid of them, but you really start to get some control, and you recognize you do them. And I say we do them because what do we all do? We do them. They are instinctual. They are in our blood. We've trained to do that. We were, you know, these are things we all do. And when I do them, my life does not go well. And I have lots of judgments in my head. I have opinions in my head. I think I know what's right and wrong and all sorts of things like that. And when I play those out, they does not play well. Somebody's going to get it. And we're doing it in families. There we go. All right? Get rid of the defense mechanism. I forgot what it was here.
Number 2, listening.
Number 2. Thank you. Does everybody know what listening sounds like?
Silence.
Never silence. You're actually listening. Could be silence. So you're looking at the person. You're looking at the person. One more thing. What type of response? Curiosity. So that's on my list, and we're going to use that one in just a second. If you are listening, you are asking questions. So if I say to you, I'm really hurting today, you would ask what? No. No.
I'm sorry about that.
No. Close, but that would be taught that would run for too long in therapy class. Yes? What's hurting? Help me understand your hurt. I'm really angry about this. If you were listening, you'd say, What are you angry at? Help me understand your anger. I have this position on politics, or this position on this. Help me understand your position. We would ask questions. Do you know how many families, or situations I've been in, where I've been in 2-hour discussions in churches, because my old days, part of my old world, I used to consult the churches who were in trouble. And the only thing they did was share opinions. Are there any opinions in this room? Are there any people with opinions? They never asked one question. Never once. Tell me what you mean by it. Tell me what you feel. What's behind that? You feel we should introduce people in the church? I feel we shouldn't do it. Let me understand your feeling about why we shouldn't introduce people in church. Help me understand why you're feeling this. Help me understand those feelings. You ask a series of questions. I do this in family business sometimes. I'll take the CEO of the company and say, ask your son 10 questions in a row without ever giving your opinion. I've never had anybody able to do that yet. Male or female. They just can't stop themselves. They'll ask 2 questions and they'll say, well, that's ridiculous. We're off the race. Curiosity. In order to actually have a good conversation, you have to be curious about how someone thinks and what they say. An honest curiosity. I'm interested in your perspective. I never thought of it. I never thought about your perspective. I never thought how that worked. Could you help me understand what you're thinking? You have to be curious. Instead of doing curious, we usually do what? What do we usually replace curious with? Your opinion, or you're wrong. Why do I want your opinion if you're wrong?
How they're looking at how they're sitting.
It totally is. And
A lot of it's just physical.
yeah, and a ton of it's tone of voice. You cannot have a conversation from this tone of voice. Do you know why? Speak up. Why? Why is it hard to have a tone? Why is it hard to have a conversation with this tone of voice?
It's off-putting.
It's off-putting because I added just a little bit of emphasis. Nobody's calling the police. I mean, it's not rageful. I'm just adding a little bit of aggression. And once I add aggression to it, what am I telling you? Shut up. Very nicely said. I wouldn't quite frame it that way, and that was very nice. I appreciate that.
That's what we hear, shut up.
Response versus reactivity is simply a skill. If I said I don't like you, you would ask what? What don't you like? If you reacted, you'd say,
I don't like you.
oh, you either. You know the rules of this stuff. I think you're entirely wrong. If I respond to you, I say, help me understand what makes you feel wrong. If I respond to you, if I reacted, I'd say, well, you're entirely wrong. I don't know how you got that confused, right? And I'd go one up, or I'd play with it. But I wouldn't be curious about it. I wouldn't actually. So you just break reactivity. That is a huge piece. Simple. Somebody significant to you, husband, wife, kids, something that comes up and gives you a criticism. Do you react to it? Do you get defensive? Do you get angry? Do you personalize it? All the normally you said. Or could you just have a conversation? I think, your son or daughter says to you, my sons and daughters are now 50 and 48, whatever. My 50-year-old comes and says, I just think you were unfair to me growing up. What's my gut instinct to say? That's not my gut instinct. My gut instinct is what? You want to see unfair? I can show you unfair. That's my gut instinct. Or my gut instinct is, what are you talking about? I sent you to the best schools. I raised you. What? There's soccer. What? I get all internally defensive without once knowing what he meant. Because I'm not interested in what he meant. I'm only interested in my opinion or my thoughts. You doing okay here? Just skills. Humility of opinion. Here's a very interesting one. Do you have some humility? Is that like a biblical notion, anybody? Is that like a biblical notion? Can we find about 58 places that's said in the New Testament on how you should be humble? Who inherits the earth? I don't know. We do a bunch of them. Humility is like built into our entire Christian value system. If you are humble, you can be what?
Vulnerable.
You can be vulnerable. You can be wrong. You can be interested in someone else's opinion. But if I'm right, let the games begin. Can you speak with doubt?
Can you speak with doubt? That's a question?
It is. Do you know how to do it? Want to try? Say something with doubt in it. Take an opinion, a strong opinion you have, but put some doubt into it. I forgot your first name.
Alex.
Alex, good. So Alex, just try. I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't want to.
No,
just,
you're good.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Just if you said something, a strong opinion you have, but put some doubt in it, so there's room for me to speak.
I'm good at tech. I think.
That's not bad, actually. See, that was very, actually, quite skilled. He didn't do it with words, but he did it with tone of voice.
Yeah.
There's room for me to say, look, gosh, if you could have done it this way, it would have been a little bit better. I say to you, I do have strong opinions about this thing that's going on. I do have strong opinions. Look, I have strong opinions about what's going on. You want to hear my opinions? Right. If you asked me, I'll bet we could all sit here. I would have some very strong opinions. And I'm not that good at tech. I'm like an old guy. I don't know the first read. But there's, you're just putting a little bit of sense of invitation. Look, I disagree with you. But let's talk. Look, I disagree with you. I mean, how much room is there for you? How are you going to speak up? How many people are just going to kind of make a joke or laughter? You're not. Conversation's over. So you just have enough ability to just put a little bit of, maybe I'm not 100% right all the time. So room for someone to respond. I said that. And just the last thing is, do you have self-reflection? Do you know your own stuff? Do you know where you make mistakes? You've got some reflection. Do you know enough about your own histories where you carry forward some really good stuff and you carry forward some bad stuff? You follow me on that? And you kind of take responsibility for it. And last thing, can you just think systemically? Does anybody know what that means? If today goes well or poorly, whose fault is it? It's yours. That was very good. I'm very good hearing. Much to my wife's chagrin, who we both had a hearing test the same day. She came out with $5,000 hearing aids, and I came out with the hearing of a 14-year-old. Not a good day. Anyway, what's systemic thinking? You are a player. You are not innocent. There's no dynamic in my family that I am not a player. If we're all systemic thinkers, if this is successful today or not successful, whose fault is it? All of ours. It does not mean I don't take the majority of responsibility for it, because I'm standing here, I'm quote unquote, whatever you want to call me, the teacher or whatever, professor in a university or something like that. But everybody has some responsibility for it. For instance, somebody could get highly reactive to me here. Highly reactive. And maybe I can manage it well or not manage it well, but you remove the entire dynamic of what actually happened here. Does that make sense? And I'm in hundreds of those situations. So could I put it into a conversation? Maybe I could, see if I was having a good day, or do I just, whatever. Those are the skills. So this next version of major difficulties is stuff you just want to think about. So the first one is, what do you elicit? That's the most interesting question. If I'm teaching a parenting class, by the way, your church is so alive with so many kids. I was thinking about starting this discussion with, these kids were, I went to your services, these kids were making all this noise, they were disrupting the service. I couldn't even hear your minister. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know why you let these kids in the service. I thought that would have been a good one to start with. It was just so wonderful to see such a church is so alive. Leave that. So what do you listen to? Always a basic question in any family relationship. For instance, I'm eliciting something from you right now. Would that be true? For instance, you're either glad to be here or Let's see, he's got 18 more minutes. Can't wait to get out. There's certain behaviors I can do that would elicit either one of them. Or you have a certain attitude towards me or towards the topic or talking that could. The question is, do you know what you're listening? I don't care what I'm listening. I know right and I know wrong. And you better listen. And your 3 kids do what?
Not listen.
One listens, one rebels, and the third heads to the caribou main delivers. So what do you listen? It's a very important question. So if I use this tone of voice, and I'm interested in what you think, and I'm interested in your opinion, I know you're very different than I am. I know you come from a very different background. Or you come from a different denomination, or different thought process. I'm interested in your thinking about this topic. What am I listening? Maybe not. Maybe somebody doesn't want to come to this occasion, but at least to be aware of it. That's the only thing that matters. As a parent, that's all. You can value all sorts of things, but you can elicit the opposite of that stuff without even thinking about it. If you're not practicing. I said to my 3-year-old the other day, would you sit down and listen to me? I was thinking I said to the 3-year-old who was right in front of me at church. Just sit down and listen to your parents. Totally correct. The question is, what am I listening? What is that going to elicit over time? Is this going to be a kid who can start to think, oh, he wants to be with me? What do I do what does the kid do when he's 8? Following that? Whatever. Splitting is a very interesting psychological dynamic. Do you know what splitting is? One of the definitions of ambivalence and one of the needs for faith, because it's kind of a leap of faith. What is our life like? What is God? What is God in our lives? Isn't God in our movements? Is there a heaven? Is there not a heaven? We hold on to enormous ambivalences within our faith. These things are not based on fact. They're based on truths, perhaps, but fact. No one actually has come back and said, this is what heaven was like. Get me on that? So when we do splitting, we can't hold on to ambivalence. What is my life going to be like? Truthfully, I'm going to be 74. My wife's older than I am, so she's going to be 75 next birthday, which is a wonderful conversation. Anyway, I'm going to be 74. What is my next 15 years going to look like? And the answer is, who knows? I was yesterday with my closest friend of 40 years. We played 40 years of tennis together, and he's got till April. And he'll be dead. And he'll die. He's dying. He's actively dying. Why him and not me? I don't know. It's loaded with ambivalence. And if we can manage ambivalence, we can live a very full life. But when we don't manage ambivalence, we do what? We turn it into splitting. Right people, wrong people, good people, bad people, people who are correct, people who are incorrect. We do this as nations, we do this as people, we do this in families, we do this with opinion, we do it between the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church and the United Church of Christ. You follow me on that? We have fought those battles forever in splitting, that we are the right people and you are the wrong people. Or I am the right person and you are the wrong person. Splitting comes out of a lot of different things. One is just historical in the United States. We did this with every immigrant population that came into the United States. If you study this, what we did to the Italians, what we did with the Catholics, what we did with the following that, we did this forever. We're still doing it at some level. You're splitting. These are the good people, these are the bad people. We did it with religions, we did it everywhere. The key is you see if you can break it. It's a very interesting, I don't know if you remember this from seminary, but when I was in seminary, the New Testament professor, I was 22 years old, New Testament professor, had a big sheet up in front of him just like this, and you drew a big circle up on top, if you can imagine this. And then you went dot, 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 dot. And he said, this is a picture of your life. This is God, and these million dots down below, they all look exactly the same way as you. And what he said is, there's nobody in between. There's not like the person here who's really got hands up on God and knows what God wants, and I'm really in charge of it. You follow me on that? I've got key up. You know, I'm clearly more spiritual to you than clearly. Well, see, we find agreement here, which is good. That's a very good conversation. He said, there's nothing, there's no room for arrogance in our lives. We are all just little pebbles of sand. So let's worship the Lord, and let's not think that I'm one step closer to God because I do X, or I do Y, or I don't do. It's a very interesting thing for a 22-year-old to be listening to. It's very good. Never forget it, obviously. Splitting is a universal problem, as if there are good people or bad people. If there's, yeah, there are people that I could deem as good people or bad people, but what happens if I project it onto an whole group? What happens if I project it on? That's called what? It's called prejudice. And of course, in prejudice, what am I doing with people around me? I am distancing. I am putting myself one up. Why would I need to put myself one up? Because I am insecure as a second. We're going to get to that in a minute. Hold on to that comment. All right, that's good. So, lack of an integrated self, what does that mean? If you have an integrated self, what do you know about yourself?
What's important to you?
Do you know what's important to you? What else do you know? What? You have flaws. You have flaws. You were saying?
You have a positive self-image.
So you have a positive self-image, you have positive parts of yourself, you know yourself, you think, I'm really pleased for myself, I've got good things about me, and I know I have faults and flaws. If you know faults and flaws, that in itself breaks half the projections. You can't project all the faults and flaws onto somebody else. Just knowing that. Or just as a parent, you go to your kids and say, look, I missed a whole bunch of things. It's like my oldest son came to me when he was 16, when he was 30, and my daughter was 16, born 14 years later. So he comes out to me and says, Dad, I just don't remember going to Europe ever so. Emily went to Europe when she was 15, 16, you're taking to Europe about 7. I just don't remember going. But it was a wonderful invitation that gave me just a notion of what it was like having him at 21. Both my wife were in graduate school. We had no support. There was no trust fund. And what it was like going to graduate schools poor. And how many people helped us. Follow me on that? And what his life was like in the early years, because we were counting pennies for his first 10 years. And then his life starts to switch, and I did a little bit better in the world, and we made money, and following his life is very different, but Emily was brought up completely differently at some level. That's a conversation. And I was sorry about that. I wish I could have done better. That was the real topic there is I didn't figure out how to become a father until about 10 years into his life. Figured it out eventually. I really got it nailed with my grandchildren. But it's a tad late. Here's a big one. Self-concept is intrinsic, not extrinsic. So I deal a lot with this in the businesses I work with. Some of the families with lots of wealth is what happens if money becomes your identity? This is a great topic.
You have to have it, you have to keep it.
What?
You have to keep it.
You have to keep it. If money's my identity, when can I retire? Never.
You have to always have it.
Somebody always has what? More money than I do. It takes over your whole identity. I sure as heck am not going to do what? Retire. Or sit and smell the roses. Or just relax. Or I've got enough money. I just calm down a little. Because my whole identity is money. And if the stock market crashes, I'm going to do what? I'm going to jump out a window. I'm going to be depressed for 10 years. Extrinsic is when you put your identity into something else. Here's a classic thing to do. I have no internal identity, so I'm going to put all my identity into a gang, into a movement. Doesn't matter what the movement is, but I'm going to put it into a movement. Maybe it's a positive movement, maybe it's a negative movement, but I feel now that I belong. My identity is the fact that the 5 of us all feel the same way about those people. And we're going to gather, and we're going to cement this, and we're going to prove that those people, oh, really? But we are good, because my whole identity is caught up in being a member here. Call it what you want, fill in any gap you want in that, but what happens if all your identity is in that, and then you can't fight the people you're with. This is where my identity is. So even now they're doing some things that I don't like, I can't speak up. All my identity is in being in this role, or being in my job, or I want to lose my job, or not wanting to lose the space I have, or the hatred we hold towards that group. Because if I lose the hatred, then we have to start looking at ourselves, and really, I know I'm not doing so well. We have to start being people with each other. Self-concept, you just want to make it intrinsic, much as you can. Love your neighbor as yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. I'm going to take till 10 after, can I do this? Is that all right? I just want to let you know I won't keep going on. So, just love your neighbor as yourself is such an interesting biblical phrase, because it isn't about demand, it's about a reality. Your ability to love your neighbor is incredibly tied with how much you love yourself. All of yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But if you love the good and the bad and the ugly, and you feel the grace of God, and you're constantly trying to work in terms of the Holy Spirit to grow in your life, you're following that, but you have a good self-concept, you love yourself, you care for yourself, the chances that I can love an imperfection in you are 100% higher than if I can't like any imperfection in me. If I'm judgmental of myself. Matter of fact, I'm going to hate you, or I'm going to get angry with you because I don't love this part of myself, and you represent that part. That makes sense? The ability to love someone else is incredibly tied with your ability to love others. And our ability to love ourselves is incredibly tied up in what? Upbringing and whatever the psychological answers, but forget the psychological answers, it's tied up in what? Everything in our faith says we should do that. We are loved by God, we are forgiven by God, we have grace to guide us, we've been accepted by God. Why wouldn't we love ourselves? The good, the bad, the ugly. But if we don't, I'm going to take my bad and I'm going to put it on someplace else. Negative attribution is just thinking negatively about someone. It's always self-fulfilling. I don't know how it happened, but one of my sons is just really lazy. He's lazy. I said to him early on, I said, you should be like your older brother. You know, you're kind of lazy. I'm making this up. But just you follow me on that? But if I did that, if I actually did that, I said, your older brother, look how hard he works, and look at how lazy you are. 9 times out of 10, that kid's going to become what? Lazy. Just as to say, how did I say this well? The heck with you, I'll say. Negative attribution is so interesting. If you have a negative attribution towards me, for instance, there's nothing I can say that would probably break it, because you would go after the negative. You'd go after the one thing I misspoke, or one thing I said. You'd go after the attribution you hold. By the way, my grandchildren are what?
Wonderful.
They are wonderful. And they are smart, and they are competent. Now, how they turn out, I have no idea, because, that's the ambivalence. But that's the only thing they get from me. Or they get a direct conversation and we talk about something, but even within the conversation where I think they, maybe when I have permission a little bit to talk to them or something, even there it's great. And that's just human beings, they're trying to figure it out. But if my attribution towards them is negative, we are done. We are done. All right, last 2 things. But I'm gonna mix 7 and 8 in the last 6. So let me just talk about some things we can all do. But you know what I mean by lack of attachment? You know what I mean by that? So you have the opportunity, if you have children, you have all those beautiful kids that are in that congregation, if you're a grandparent, you have the opportunity to help the child feel attached, to feel safe and trust. So what do I do with my 3-year-old every Monday, starting tomorrow at 8 o'clock? What do I do?
You tell them to look.
Oh, I love them, I acknowledge them, but most importantly, I do what? How? I play.
I what?
I play. I did what I did not know how to do with my oldest sons. Because I was 21, trying to figure out how to get through graduate school and seminary and post-seminary and all the things we did. But I figured, play. So what is real play? How much do I lecture them on the right way to build blocks? How much I annoy these making a mess? How much am I concentrating on making sure he picks up the blocks, before we do something else? How much am I teaching or lecturing or whatever, or am I simply playing? Where should this block go? He was putting the cows in place. This is true, like last Monday I caught myself. Putting the cows in a place where if you covered the wooden, the wooden blocks, the wooden block where you were on top, is the cow was too strong, was too tall, excuse me. So I was trying to lecture him a little bit on the cows should actually go over here. He wanted the cows here. So I caught myself, I said, absolutely. And then he figured out that if he puts a couple more blocks on top, he could put a roof on the barn that he was building. You follow me on that? You do play. You figure out play. That's where most safety and trust happens. And you do it when you're emotionally present. You are not doing what? I should have done that the entire day. You follow me on that? You are nowhere else. You are nowhere else. You do play. You do acknowledge. You are safe. Most safety is determined by what? Take the 52-year-olds or 3-year-olds that were in that. The parents that were sitting in front of me, I don't think you're here, but they were so good parents. The boy, the 4-year-old was playing take care, I'm not gonna say, I won't get it. 4-year-old was taking care of herself. The 3-year-old boy was saying, I want out of here. Get me out of here. And the baby was just said, good dad. I don't feel a name into that family. But the parents were perfect. What were they the entire time? Calm, thoughtful, recognizing their kids were totally normal. It's exactly what happens. When I was at my church in New Connecticut. I was sitting preaching, and row after row after row, people were standing up and sitting down. I'm trying to preach something, and row after row, 5 people stood up. I said, what is going on here? And my 3-year-old son was crawling from way back underneath the pews to get dead. So I gave a huge lecture on misbehaving, and that this is not the place to do that. I was furious with him because he was disrupting my sermon. Or I said, what? I'm so glad you wanted to be with me. Those are options. You have those choices all the time. Are you connected to your own emotions? A very big question. Because if you're connected with your own emotion, you are connected with your own fragility. You haven't bought what people have told you, that you're perfect, or you're great, or you're this or that. You're connected with your own fragility. You're connected with your own aptitude, your own inability. And if you're connected to those things, you don't project them. Because you can feel your feelings. You can feel your emotions. And this is a prejudicial statement, but for a lot of the men in this room, we were acculturated to never feel our feelings. As a prejudicial statement, it's probably more true than not. There are many women that were taught not to feel their feelings. All I know is Elizabeth can feel something way before I do. And I've been working at it for like 40 years trying to improve that part of myself, and I'm still not there. Here's the biggest one. Well, not the biggest one. So you do grace, love, forgiveness, acceptance. We already talked about that a little bit. But here's what I would do with a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. I would start practicing opinion with them. Nice to see you. I didn't even see some old faces here. So anyway, you practice opinion. You ask him when he gets 5, how am I doing as a dad? How am I doing as a mom? At 5, they won't know how to do it, but at 8, they know how to do it. What will they tell you? yell too much, or they're gonna tell you something, you know, that you don't like, that they don't like about you, or whatever, and you're gonna say, gosh, talk to me, tell me, what don't you like, what am I doing that is affecting you in these kinds of ways? She said, well, Dad, you do, you know, it was a true story, my daughter, I said, like, because I did this every year with my kids, give me your thought, how am I doing as a dad? And she said, classic things to me, really good, you know, good things, we're doing, playing soccer, all the good things, and being whatever, but sometimes you make me really feel stupid. So why don't we just take a spear through my heart? I said, well, how do I do that? She said, you do it the same way every time. I can't do the right math problem. Just, I come to you with 2x equals 4. How do I figure out x? In the first round, you're terrific. Well, all you have to do is get the x alone. You know how to do division. If you got the x alone, how would you do it? If you just divide everything by 2, just think about how that would work. If I don't get it the second time you ask me, look, I've told you how to do it. You're not dumb. You know how to do this. This is the third time you're nuts. How accurate do you think that was? Pretty accurate. It comes from very specific places in myself. Look at it. I had a learning disability growing up. It comes from all sorts of serious places in my life. What did I teach her after that? You may talk back to me anytime. Why? I don't want that stuff to go underground. I want the dialogue. Does that make sense? But you can practice opinion from very early stages. And if you take these kids and give me your best thought on this, you see this happen in the world, what are your best thoughts? I think about it a little bit differently. You know, it seems to me that it's a little bit like this, or like this, and whatever. And you can have those conversations. You can do it at a very young age. And they start to practice thinking. And they start to practice different opinions. And I'll say to, you know, my grandchildren now, I say, look, I'm an old guy, this is the way I think. I just think, how do you think differently in the world? How does it fit differently? And my grandchildren say, well, Grandpa, we don't think like that at all. You know, well, how do you think? I'm interested in that. I'm interested in what that looks like. To practice it. I can't say that enough. You have to do things with young kids, and we all have the opportunity to do this, perhaps, is do play and practice opinion. And help them practice opinion with you, because you're imperfect. And when they tell you something that you're doing that's annoying, it is a what? It is a gift. Because they trust you enough, and there's enough safety in the room, they can actually come. But do the same thing on the next issue of this church. I don't know what it's going to be, but it will be. If I say some issue, come to it with some humility. Come to it with some thought process. Come to it with some interest in other people's perspective on what the church should do in this situation. Be the united body of Christ. Don't just end up being this division and this division against each other, because there's nothing in that allows us just to be. So, that's my best shot at the skills. I practice them a lot. I fail at them many times. But I can tell you that when I catch myself from failing, I go back and I do it well. The classic discussion would be to Elizabeth, because our kids are all gone, dependent, and blah, blah, blah. The classic with Elizabeth, I say, I just did that. Can we start again? Tell me what you meant by that. Tell me what you're feeling. To express what she's feeling, and all of a sudden we're having a completely different communication. So I urge you to do that as your families, your relationships with your kids, as a church, as residents of Pennsylvania, as residents of the United States, as part of a world of nations of whatever. Just think about what it looks like to actually step into conversation. That's the goal. Thank you very much.